What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and I just wanted to give you a heads up because you're probably going to start seeing people talking about day one errata for the player's handbook. And it's kind of true, honestly. We're starting to see some discrepancies between what's in the physical printed books and what's showing up on D&D Beyond. And most of the time, it seems like it's just adjustments to things, changes in such a way that make it basically fixing an issue or something that was erroneous, didn't make sense, did nothing in the instance of one species trait. These are things that have not been, these aren't secret things. People have already started talking about these adjustments and kind of already postulating that this is probably a typo or a mistake. And it seems like a lot of that has been rectified in these D&D Beyond updates. The thing that sucks, though, is again, if you have a physical book, you're basically out of date the second this went on D&D Beyond. But this isn't anything new. I just wish we could get an official errata from Wizards of the Coast on what needs to be changed or updated. Unless honestly, they might just not know at this point. But we'll talk about that in a second. So first thing I wanted to tell you is D&D Beyond's kind of janky right now. So if you're using D&D Beyond as your character sheet or to run your campaigns, just be forewarned your players may have some issues. I know I'm running a campaign. I'm actually running a campaign later this evening, which will be over on my Twitch channel. And at some point, we might just set up the dual stream and get it over here on YouTube as well. But either way, I had to go through and do a lot of homebrew and tweaking on my end to make things work. For example, if you're using a 2014 subclass with a 2024 base class, like my druid player is using the 2024 base druid, but the wildfire druid, so sticking with the 2014 subclass. Normally, there's no issues. Everything seems just ports over pretty well. It just shifts the subclasses to third level. No real issue there. The problem is if she goes to prepare her spells, she'll have the option to choose the 2014 or the 2024 version of those spells. But the 2014 subclass gives you circle spells, right? Auto prepared spells. Those automatically default to the 2014 version. And as we know, the 2024 version of, let's say, Cure Wounds, which is one of the ones that she gets auto prepared, is 2d8 plus something, and then upcasts for an additional 2d8 for each level above first. That doesn't appear to work with the 2014 subclass. It auto defaults to the 2014 version of Cure Wounds. My 2024 Life Cleric, for example, like the aid spell is supposed to be auto prepared, just not happening. And it prepares the correct Cure Wounds, but when it upcasts it, it's not upcasting it at 2d8 additional. It's adding only 1d8 additional. So there's definitely some issues here, and that is a minute fraction of the issues that are happening on D&D Beyond. There is currently a 24-page thread on D&D Beyond just outlining people complaining or telling you, hey, this is an issue. And honestly, I think a lot of it's rightfully deserved, right? It's not like you didn't know this was coming. You guys knew before the rest of us when the 2024 stuff was going to drop. I realize that they've done a lot of layoffs, which is unfortunate because you've really shrunk down the D&D Beyond team to it seems like there may not be enough people to ingest all of the issues and all of the content that you want to put out there. So, my point is you should have had this from the start. But let's go ahead and we're going to talk about a couple of the updates and just kind of give you some places and link you to some places that are worth keeping track of where people are logging these differences. But I also just wanted to point you to that thread, which is right here, Player's Handbook Issues and Support thread on D&D Beyond. This will be linked in the description, right? If you're noticing something, you can obviously read through. If you feel like taking the time to read through all 24 pages, you obviously can do so. But you'll also be able to just post, hey, if you saw something, hey, I noticed this wasn't working. For example, I think none of the classes with extra attack is showing up on their character sheets. Paladins aren't able to choose their fighting style feat. Divine Sense, at least as of me checking yesterday, just doesn't exist. So there's a lot of things that are just appropriated and placed here in this document. Some things do work though. For example, barbarians finally have a button to check off to activate rage, which will add the benefit of giving you well, I guess I might just give you the damage, which is kind of cool. But basically, this is also going to call out the biggest issues and like the things that are not currently supported with your classes. So I mean, not that it helps, but if you want to come here and you're noticing that one thing's not available or there's no good way to do it on D&D Beyond for your 2024 class, I would come here first and then look, and you could say like, oh, okay, if we look at fighter, it calls out that the champion fighter's improved critical. They don't have a way of increasing your effective critical hit range on the character sheet, which is ridiculous because that functionality hasn't changed since the 2014 version of the fighter, which means that for the entirety of D&D Beyond existing, they haven't been able to give the fighter the little pop-up for crit on 18 or 19 based on what level they're at. Again, it's not something that is reassuring, I guess, or maybe it is, that like, hey, you at least know, you're like, hey, why isn't this working? Well, it's not you didn't do something right. It's something that they flat out called out as it just doesn't work. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to call this out to make sure everybody is aware that the big issues that D&D Beyond and the D&D Beyond team have noticed, it's listed here. These things are called out, so you may be, again, they're working on it, or they're trying to fix it. You're just aware that those are the things. Oh, well, I just noticed this one, that the super amazing capstone of the Ranger getting their hunter's mark to go to a D10, they can't support that. So, not that it was worth supporting in the first place, but it is not supported in D&D Beyond. But anyway, one of the things I wanted to call your attention to this Reddit thread and this D&D Beyond thread. This D&D Beyond thread seems to be more updated about calling out differences between what's written in the physical book and what's currently on D&D Beyond. So, first one they mention here is the Goliath. Essentially, what was originally written, if we were to go ahead and pull that up, we'll have to jump around a little bit, so bear with me. I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this. But if we were to pull up the Goliath, you'll notice that it had a feature, or you guess you won't notice anymore. But if we were to go to the view all sources, also I want to point out that I think a lot of it's been fixed, but there is the free rules that are available to everybody and the 2024 Player's Handbook, or I think everybody that has a master tier subscription gets the free rules, and it's going to be updated to include every class when everything officially rolls out on the 17th. But it seems to be mostly fixed, but people were actually seeing discrepancies between the 2024 Player's Handbook and the free rules. They were seeing one thing would be written in one way or have features or something written a certain way, and then it was different in the other way. It seems like a lot of that has been rectified since me making this video, but it's worth calling out. If we were to jump to Goliath, you see this feature here. You have advantage on any ability check you make to end the grappled condition. So if you were to look at the grappled condition, when someone goes to grapple you, they make a strength or dexterity saving throw. That's how the grapple is initialized, right? I go to grapple you with an unarmed strike. You make a strength or dexterity saving throw. If you succeed based on my DC, then you're not grappled. However, if I do succeed and you are grappled, you will make either an athletics check or an acrobatics check to break out of that on subsequent turns, right? Which is kind of wonky. I don't love this, that it starts as a saving throw and then continues as a check. I feel like you could have just kept it like it was in 2014, where it was a check the whole time, or just make it a saving throw the whole time. Run one or the other. Why have it do both? It just seems a little wonky. But what was written in the physical book was you have advantage on any saving throw you make to end the grappled condition. Well, as you can see on the screen right in front of me, you never make a saving throw to end the grappled condition. It's to stop the initial grapple, but subsequent chances to end the grappled condition are made with ability checks. So you actually had, as the Goliath in the physical written book, an ability that just does nothing. It just didn't work. It didn't do what it was supposed to do. However, now it says you have advantage on any ability check you make to end the grappled condition, which works as intended, showing that, again, you'll have advantage on either that athletics or acrobatics check to break the grapple. So that's a good fix, right? The armor table, if we were to go ahead and pull up the armor, we'll jump to the poisoner one in a minute here. But basically, if you were to look at armor, it tells you in the table, as you can see right here, how long it takes to put on or take off a suit of armor. And at the bottom here, you'll see how it says shield utilize action to don or doff. For those of you who don't recall or are unaware, the utilize action is the new term for the use an item action. So you would use an action typically to put on or take off your shield. While the physical printed version of the book, this set of language here, utilize action to don or doff, doesn't exist. Therefore, meaning you could just, as a free action with your use object interaction or otherwise, could put on or take off a shield. I don't think that was ever the intention to be the case, but that's obviously now been fixed with this small update that you see here. What else we have? Oh, the grappler feat. All right, let's see if that's in here in the free rules. So let's see. General feats. Is the grappler feat in here? No, the only general feat included in here is the ability score improvement. Okay, that's fine. Let's go ahead and jump over to the player's handbook. We'll jump over to the grappler feat. Oh, I'm in the free rules, my bad. The grappler feat had language in it that just didn't make sense. So if we were to go back and choose the grappled condition that we were talking about, if you see that, it says a creature successfully grab. You need one hand to grapple. And if you are, that is grappling. Where's the grappled condition, right? Movable. The character can drag or carry you when it moves, but every foot of movement it costs is one extra foot unless you are tiny or two or more sizes smaller than it. So the trick that people, or the issue that people are bringing up, is the grappler feat states right here, you don't spend, it used to say in the physical book, it said, I'll tell you exactly what it says, but it used to say, I think it doesn't half your movement is what it had said, which again, doesn't make sense because it doesn't have your movement. It just costs an extra foot of movement. So the intention was there, the wording was wrong. So it used to say, written in here, your speed isn't halved when you move a grappled creature if the creature's size smaller than you, right? So here it says now you don't have to spend extra movement to move a grappled creature, which now works as intended. Again, that was always seemingly what they were trying to get at. It just wasn't written in such a way that the functions work together. Another thing called out here is the poisoner feat. It said originally, it said the poison lasted, now it lasts until you hit, but now it's until you deal damage. So again, the poison, it lets you brew poison as part of the poisoner feat, and it says as a bonus action you can apply it to a piece of ammunition or a weapon. Once applied, the poison retains its potency for 1 minute or until you hit with the poisoned item, whichever is shorter. When a creature takes damage from the poison item, they must make a con save. If they fail, they take 2d8 poison damage and have the poisoned condition until the end of your next turn. The reason why that's an important distinction between until you hit and until you deal damage is the fact that we live in a world with weapon mastery and the graze property exists. So I could put, acid on my great axe, let's say, and if I go to hit you with my great axe or great sword, whichever one has graze, I think it's great sword, and I go to hit you and I miss you, the function of the graze property is even though I miss, I still get to deal some base damage to you. So I could use my greatsword with the poisoner feat and just constantly be poisoning people no matter what, because I'm hitting you and I'm missing you, but I'm just dealing the poison damage to you. And it actually almost benefited you more to not hit people, to miss them and just graze them with the graze ability, so you could continue applying this poison to everybody on the battlefield. Now that it's changed to until you deal damage, even if you hit them with the graze property, that will still trigger off the poison and remove it from your weapon. Again, small distinction, but this is the kind of things that we're seeing the changes from the physical book to D&D Beyond. All right, giant insect is another really interesting one that we can talk about. I didn't actually cover this in my 10 biggest spell changes, but I will at some point get a chance to make that full video regarding spells, so we'll talk about that there. But you see this how it says the giant insect's a 4th level spell, and its hit points calculation is 30 plus 10 for each spell level above 4. Well, in the physical written book, that above 4 is missing, which means that a giant insect has 70 hit points. And given that a spider giant insect has this ability here where it can just auto hit somebody and drop their movement speed to 0, that plus 70 hit points is a beefy, chunky boy that can just basically shut down the entire, enemy team over time. But if you have multiple ones in the party, you just got a bunch of hit point, tanks to just also shut down the movement speed of the enemy party. So they have since added this above 4, meaning that, again, it starts with 30, and if you cast it with, say, 5th level, it'll have 50 or 40 hit points as opposed to that 30. 30 hit points isn't a small amount, right? You could still maybe take at least 1, maybe 2 hits, depending on, a level 7 character being able to cast this. Now, this spell calculation for the hit points is a pretty common thing. We see this on just about every single summon spell. However, what's odd is this exact terminology is here for Find Steed, where it says 5 plus 10 per spell level. Again, the spell level of Find Steed is 2nd level, so Find Steed has 25 hit points, so that calculation written as per spell level isn't unheard of in this book. It just apparently was the incorrect amount for something like giant insect. Conjure woodland beings. I'm not going to go over this one. They've basically changed all spells that scale in damage to, if it was cast at, say it's a 4th level spell, it'll do an extra D8 for every level above 4, right? We've seen this in the past where, like, spiritual weapon, you had to upcast it to a certain point for it to be able to access higher damage dice. Like, it didn't have a direct 1-to-1 scale. Spiritual weapon's a 2nd level spell. At 3rd level, it does another D8 and so on. It didn't scale properly. Conjure woodland beings was unfortunately written incorrectly, where it said it's a 4th level spell and it would only deal an extra D8 damage for every spell level above 5, meaning level 6 is when it started to scale properly. They have since adjusted that back down so that it scales per level as originally intended. The telekinetic feat, it also references here. The mage hand range limit has been fixed. Previously, it just lets you cast it up to 30 feet away, up to 30 feet further, but now they've added and the distance it can be away from you to the description. All right, so this is basically an issue where you could cast it further away, but it would just disappear. So it says here, it can be cast. Its range and distance can be away from you. Its range and the distance it can be away from you both increase by 30 feet from when you cast it, right? So normally Mage Hand is a 30-foot range. Here in my book, it says when you cast the Spectral Hand and its range increases by 30 feet when you cast it, which meant that even though you could cast it out to 60 feet, it would disappear if it went more than 30 feet, because that's how the original Mage Hand spell is written. If you look at Mage Hand, right, it says, as a magic action, as part of the action, you can move the hand 30 feet. The hand vanishes if it's ever more than 30 feet away from you, or when you cast it again, meaning even though you could cast it out to 60 feet per what's written in the book, you could do that, but it would just disappear immediately. But they've since added this terminology here that how far away it can be to basically have it work again as intended. And the last big one here is True Polymorph. Kind of one of the mainstays, as many of us know, with True Polymorph is its capability to permanently turn you into a creature. The way a lot of these new spells work that were polymorph or wild shape or any of those kind of things that let you transform into something else, instead of having you just take on the pool of hit points of that creature, it now grants you temporary hit points equal to whatever that creature's hit points were. It's just a kind of way to clean that up a little bit. So previously, if you were to look at True Polymorph, it says you turn them into whatever. It lasts for the duration or until the target dies or destroyed. But if you maintain concentration on the spell for the full duration, the spell lasts until dispelled, which is how it's always kind of been, right? You maintain concentration, you lock it in, now that person transforms into whatever they're transformed into. The difference being, you'll see again, the target gains a number of temporary hit points equal to the hit points of the new form. That's what I was just describing, how they're handling the HP situation for this. However, in the physical printed book, this line of you get temporary hit points equal to that of the new form was followed by the spell ends early on the target if it has no temporary hit points left. Meaning you could spend your 9th level spell to turn the big bad into a frog and concentrate on it for an hour so they become permanently a frog. But because of the rules that were written in the physical book, if their temporary hit points disappeared, they would transform back. And even if they didn't get knocked out of the temporary hit points, you lose all temporary hit points when you take a long rest anyway. So they would just go to sleep and then wake up turned back into whatever they were. So again, they fixed this issue by making True Polymorph kind of do what everybody always wants it to do, where you could permanently turn yourself into a dragon or whatever you might want to do. So once again, another issue fixed in the form of something not working as intended. So I will link this D&D Beyond thread as well as this Reddit thread in the description so you guys can go and keep an eye on all of those. But I just wanted to put out a video to just make you aware that there are things. So you may see, if you're a DM and you're playing with your physical book, and I'm a player playing in your game using D&D Beyond, you might see that there's a discrepancy between what I have as the player at the table or you have as the DM or vice versa. And it's unfortunate to see this because, well, I guess it's not unfortunate to see it. It's unfortunate that these issues ended up in the physical book in the first place. That's the issue. It's just a bummer that people are already, I can tell you people are already going to see this as I just got my book yesterday and it's already out of date. Well, technically that's the way it is with anything where you have a digital medium and things are on the internet. Things will just be out of date the second they are put into print. Now, there is no official errata document as of me recording this video. There is no updated Sage Advice Compendium clarifying any of the rules or issues. As a reminder, most of the time Wizards of the Coast will wait to release an errata for the book until the next printing run. So if this book is the first print run, which is the one that everybody has or people are going to pick up today from their store or whatever, this one will be the one that matches. Everybody else will have this. But let's say they run out of prints, they are printing on to second print, and this is second print. Second print will have the updates, probably everything that we're seeing so far on D&D Beyond that'll be covered in second print and be written about in an errata document. And that'll get released for free on the internet, and then you can go and either write in your book and make the changes or just print it out, keep it in your book, or ignore it entirely. It's up to you. But I think we had 6 erratas on the Player's Handbook 2014 from 2014 through 2021 or so. There were updates to that book over time where they would release every time there was a new printing run, we'd get an update, they release a free errata document, and then they would also do things again like the Sage Advice Compendium, which is basically where someone like Jeremy Crawford or other folks that are involved in the ruling of 5e will tell you, okay, the big question that I've had, I made a whole video on it, is the way Counterspell is written now, it limits you, or the way spellcasting is written now, you can cast more than one spell on a turn as long as only one of those is using your spell slots, which means that if I bonus action Misty Step with my spell slots and then go to use the magic action to cast a fireball from my wand of fireballs, which is not me casting a spell with a spell slot, I'm using my magic item, and you go to counterspell me to stop my wand from doing its thing, in theory, am not able to counterspell you back, potentially, because I've already cast a spell with my spell slot being Misty Step. Therefore, I can't counterspell you because I'm only allowed to... We're still on my turn. Well, I do understand that reactions interrupt turn, the typical turn flow. It is still my turn, even though you're doing something on my turn. I think the way things are written, that I can't counterspell your counterspell because of the fact that I've already used a spell slot. I don't want to turn this into a counterspell video, but that's a kind of thing that would be great to have a Sage Advice ruling on. And, for what it's worth, I just want to let you guys know that I did reach out to my contacts at Wizards of the Coast 2 weeks ago, or maybe a week or so ago, and said, hey, I know you guys are probably gearing up for the official launch into early access on D&D Beyond. And I did my best, and I said, listen, in my opinion, for what it's worth, I would probably look to have either an errata document or a sage advice compendium ready to release alongside the book, because already with less than 3,000 copies of this in circulation, people have already called out a bunch of clarifications for rules, some things not working as intended, a lot of what's been fixed here on D&D Beyond already, and said, here's my best list. And I provided them a big long list of every single interaction that I found that seems weird, seems wonky. I called out the Goliath thing, the giant insect thing, the counterspell thing we were just talking about, and said, these are what I've seen in my videos, comments on my videos, and other creators' content. And, just wanted to provide this to you to say, hey, if you want to start a Sage Advice Compendium, here's a bunch of stuff you could possibly look to use to hopefully help clarify that and, ideally nip a lot of this confusion in the bud per the rules itself. Now, obviously, the D&D Beyond issues that we're seeing where stuff's just not working on D&D Beyond, that's a D&D Beyond issue, not a player's handbook issue. But that's where we're at right now. So I never heard anything back. So I don't know. Maybe my fingers are crossed that when the book launches into official regular street release on the 17th of September, that's when the Sage Advice article will come out, or the errata, or whatever it's going to be. But I'd love to have it now. If you have it now, that's the other thing. I feel like they sit on the errata until the new printing. If you have it now, I say release it now. But either way, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. I'll see you all next time.